I have 6 children, and I'm unable to convince them that just being healthy and alive and living in the United States or Canada, you're in the top 1% most fortunate people on the planet. But they don't get it.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia. And for all those people watching us around the world, Prince George is in the center of British Columbia, Canada. It is on the west coast. It's an amazing province, big province actually. And most people know either Victoria or Vancouver. We are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or also 800 kilometers, which puts us physically in the center of British Columbia, north to south, east to west. And the temperature here, it's around zero, -2 maybe. For all those people watching us, and especially those from the warm countries, about 2 weeks ago it was about 42 -0. A little bit on the nippy side, but again, that's all part of winter. Today we have a special guest, John Hewitt, who is a entrepreneur extraordinaire, a leader in the community and franchising, an amazing guest with an amazing history. John, give us a bit of a background on yourself, where you were born, your training, your education, and then we get into the success that you have had in franchising and a number of other things.
Well, since I'm 74 years old, I have a long history. But I was born while my dad was at Michigan State.
Okay.
And so I spent the first 4 years of my life in Lansing, Michigan. And then my family moved to upstate New York.
Okay.
And I went to high school in a suburb of Buffalo. And then I went to the University of Buffalo. While I
Okay.
was there, my dad tried to buy a franchise of H&R Block. And they said, well, we're going to put a company store there. Why don't you have your son take our tax course and see if he'd like to work for us? And I took the course. I loved it. Started working for H&R Block. I left university to run 10 block offices, and 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. And happy as a lark, that's what I wanted to be once I started working for them. And my dad interceded again. He was the CFO of a public company now, and he had bought one of the first Apple computers by mail. He liked it better than the mainframe that was running his public company. So he convinced me to leave Block, and he left his job. And in 1981, we built the first tax software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it, way ahead of its time. We got blessed and found a company in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. He had died. We bought 6 offices from Mel Jackson's widow. We merged the 2 companies, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, went public, and 15 years later sold it for $483 million. I
Nice
had
jobby.
almost a $500 million. It went on later to become $1 billion company, and today Jackson Hewitt has 6,000 locations in the United States, and they're the 23rd largest retail franchise chain in the country. So I had a non-compete for 3 years, but didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt had never gone to Canada. Having grown up in Buffalo, I knew the Canadian tax system. I had done Canadian tax returns, and I knew how successful H&R Block was in Canada. So we opened Liberty Tax in Canada, and within 3 years became a top 100 retail chain. So now I built one of the top 100 retail chains in US and one of the top 100 in Canada. When my non-compete ended in 2000, came back to the United States, and now I had to compete against my own name, my own software, my own system, my own people. And yet not only did we grow faster than Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than them and H&R Block combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years. Again, a public company, my second public company, again worth $500 million. And again, I sold my stock. And now they say third time's a charm. We've started loyalty brands. And loyalty brands, unlike Jackson Hewitt and Liberty, where I just had one brand, At Loyalty Brands, we have 8 different franchisors. So that's my 54-year career.
Well, very impressive, John. So, you are an older fella. I'm a little bit older than you. I was born in 1940, so I'm approaching 84. And I'm 84 years young, I call it. I will be this year. And I've been in business as well here in Canada for about 60 years, and I was born in Holland in 1940, obviously, just before the Second World War. Things were a challenge then. It makes me appreciate how important it is to have peace and how fortunate we are living in North America, for one. And I speak about that a lot. Every time I fly around a lot, I have a lot of companies, and not quite in the same level as you are, but we're very active. And as I fly around, I sit usually by the window and I look outside. I said, it's paradise. It simply is paradise. And then I appreciate the country that we live in, Canada or North America, is that being a democratic country, and although these things sometimes become complicated, a little bit messy maybe, democratic, but it's much better than a dictatorship. And for those that wonder if it is, try Russia, try North Korea, try Iran, or Venezuela, or Cuba, or one of those places, and maybe people will appreciate it a little bit more. And then the same is war, having grown up during the war, seeing the results of it. A lot of people think that if there is war, after the war is over, you go back to business as usual. That's simply not so. And I've seen that. I've seen that in my family, and for ourselves. It will take sometimes generations before there is a sense of normality. So when I came to Canada, we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945. It made such an impression on me that I always knew I would go to the land of my heroes, and which was Canada. And then I was economic. I was not a very good student. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, what we're going to do with this guy? Should we send him to the mentally challenged school? My parents were beautiful people. Or should we try to get him a trade? So they decided to get me a trade. And we were attached to the lumber industry. My dad managed a small lumber company, not his own. And then my grandfather was a master carpenter. So wood was in my bones, and so they sent me to a furniture factory at 13, and I became a furniture maker. And I didn't feel very good about that, and especially not. I loved the furniture industry and all of those things, and I was ambitious, and I watched all the successful business persons, as to what you could do. But in Holland, it was this way, that if at some point you would get a job or you wanted to go build a business or get married, no matter what you did, they always would ask, where are your diplomas? And I didn't have any diplomas. And so then at 17, I wanted to go to Canada. My parents wouldn't let me. I was then drafted into the to the Dutch Air Force for 30 months. And then when I was 23, I left for Canada I wanted to start with nothing, and because I knew I could be just as challenged as my friends that went to college and to universities, and I started with a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I was going to go build a lumber mill in British Columbia. So at 23, I left Amsterdam, $150 in my suitcase, arrived here in July of 1965 in Vancouver, and went to the Canadian immigration department. And fortunately, there was a German fellow working there. I couldn't speak the language, didn't have a job, didn't know a soul. I could speak some German, and told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a mill. And he said, Prince George, go to Prince George. That's, again, as we already know, is British Columbia has a lot of timber. And I arrived here in Prince George in July of 1965 at the Greyhound station. I can still see it in the distance here. And I had my suitcase, my 3 books, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I did have plenty of attitude. No matter how tough it is today, I know it's going to be better tomorrow. I had passion. I will, no matter what I do, I give it 150%. And work ethic, I work harder than anybody, even now at 83 or 84 years old. I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think that I'm late, and then I work hard, 60, 70 hours a week, and the process starting out with my $25.47. Now, 50 years later, I did build my own lumber companies, and we have 8 or 10 different companies right now, and doing quite well on that part, but that's not what it's about. But, it took me up to January 1997 when I picked up a book in a store here, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction. And I just still don't know why I picked up the book, John. And the book was about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote in the book in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And so...
Yeah, they hadn't invented it when you were a child.
Yeah. And I was born ADHD. And then, again, the war years were tough. For us, we saw far too much that we should not have seen. My dad was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last time they heard from him when Rotterdam was bombed. And so my mom my son was pregnant with me then when it started in April of 1940. I had 1 sister and 1 brother, 2 years old. So during that period, I still remember now when I was even 3.5, 4 years old, hundreds of planes overhead when the Allied forces bombed Germany, and we lived in the northeastern part of Holland. And we would go in the evenings outside on a deck, not to watch the beautiful planes, but it was safer outside in the mind of my mother than inside. And in the distance, we could see, and particularly if you visualized northeastern Holland, you saw the cities burning like Bremen, Wilhelmshaven, Kiel, Hamburg. In the distance, the sky would be red. And then things got pretty rough, and especially in 1944-45, the hunger winter, we as kids would go out every day to the railroad yards with gunny sacks and pick up anything edible and burnable, and to stay warm and to have food. And that for me now is nearly 78 years ago. I can still feel the feeling of hunger and cold, and then the other part, anxiety of losing that only parent that we had, because everybody had the same issues and the same problems. So it took me to well into my 50th year that I got counseling on the inner child, and PTSD stayed with me as it always does. So that gives you just a little bit of a background about me, and but I've always been very interested in business and things around it, and I already did that in Holland. That anytime there were successful entrepreneurs, I wanted to understand how they made things click. And an interesting question would be if you would ask me, what 3 books did you take with you when you came from Holland? Well, the one book was Management by Drucker in Dutch, and the other one was Logical Thinking, and the other one was about Canada. And so the message that I usually give people in a general sense when I do, I'm usually very active on the speaking circuit, and obviously on podcasting and other opportunities where I have, how fortunate we are, and to live in a country like North America in peace, because war and dictatorship will change everything around you, and the not a good alternative and something that should be avoided.
Yeah,
So it gives you a bit of an
I've been unable to even convince. I have 6 children, and I'm unable to convince them that just being healthy and alive and living in the United States or Canada, you're in the top 1% most fortunate people on the planet. But they don't get it.
No, I know. So I can assure them, and probably that's what makes me fortunate in a way, with all the adversity of being there. I still remember, I saw what happened after the war, when my dad came back after it was liberated, but he was never the same again. And it never, the family, they did stay together, and my mom passed away when she was 83, my dad when he was 80, but he never could really communicate about it, and it changed them dramatically, and it left me with memories, even about the war years, with seeing hundreds of planes in the air, and the sound of that daytime, nighttime bombing is a sound that still stays with me today, and the feeling of hunger and anxiety of losing that parent, and all those things. I can look back on it and I remember it, and I don't wish this on anybody, but I call myself, in a sense, fortunate that I had that background, because it laid the foundation for I'm ready for anything that will happen from here on in. And I share this with young people in particular, saying that going from where I came from, where you came from, and being where we are today, it makes us stronger. If you had to go to the alternative, it would not be very good.
Absolutely. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah,
And you're right. It's a blessing and a curse, but at least you'll always be grateful.
absolutely. And then being in North America and Canada, to me, obviously, in particular, is that we are so lucky, and we are so fortunate. Now, the other thing that I noticed, that you are also an author, and for me, the a number of things that I'm a bit of a late bloomer. That I started writing books when I was about 5 years ago. And a lot of people said to me, with all the things that you should write a book about it, and saying, and as you well know, writing books is not easy. And so I started on a biography, and I stopped, and for about 20 years. And then I knew if I didn't start it, now at 83, 84, it will never happen. So I wrote this book, came out about 5 years ago. It's against all odds. And it's not about, hurrah, how successful John is. That's not about that. It's about all the ups and downs along the way, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it got pretty difficult and pretty tough along the way. And so I did that. And then the other part, John, that is interesting to me is that obviously when I found out about ADHD in 1997, when I was 57 years old, it took me 5 years before I would go to my doc that had delivered our 2 daughters, actually, and and was a personal friend. And my doc said, I came into his office and he said to me, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we kind of looked at that, and yeah, I do. And the more I found out about it, in terms of what it is, in terms of frequency of occurrence, it was thought to be about 8% of the population. I believe it was probably 20%. And then Dr. Halliwell, who wrote the book Driven to Distraction, and wrote 17 other books, actually, and is an ADHD as well. He was on my podcast about 2 weeks ago, and it was an interesting discussion. And I just want to share this with you so that in our discussion, it was a very interesting one, especially since he changed my life really in 1997. He wrote a book in 1993. So we're talking about saying that I believe that the frequency of occurrence of ADHD is 20%. He said, no, John, it's probably 25%. And I agree with them. And then the other part, and that among successful entrepreneurs and CEOs, and the operative here is successful ones, the frequency of occurrence of ADHD, I believe, is at least 50%. He said, no, John, it's probably 75%.
Can't disagree with that. I certainly have it.
Yeah, and interesting, so, and in fact, John, that for one of our companies, we were looking for management, top line individual. So we advertised across country and blah, blah, blah. And I added to the ad that ADHD considered to be an asset.
Wow. I've never
And
seen an ad like that, I got to say.
yeah, so, and I feel very strongly about it for all the reasons that you know, because I believe, and it follows, obviously I've read your biography carefully, and this is all stuff that you deal with as well, with all the things that you are doing and have been doing. But I want to add this comment about it as saying, okay, what makes ADHD unique to you then, John, is likely leaving school at 13 was the right thing for me. Some people say to me, are you tongue in cheek a little bit? And how do you, does it trouble you that you left school at 13? I say, yeah, it does, really. I should have left earlier, tongue in cheek. But the background of having worked with my hands and starting from that beginning and then acquiring the skill sets along the way has benefited me well. And I've been very active in the community. I'm very active in industry as an industry leader and all the other things. What is the benefit that I have is that rather than thinking in a box, I want to look outside of that box, and I do that all the time. I want to be a strategic thinker that thinks not so much about today, but 5 years from now, 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, as to what does it look like, where are the opportunities, and how do we get there. That's my specialty, and I'm good at that, so. And obviously, so are you. That's what made you who you are.
Absolutely. Vision is an incredibly important part of huge success.
So if I look at that, John, is that I look at North America today and Canada, US, but and I'm very involved in the forest industry. I'm stay actively involved in understanding what goes on in other parts of the world. Is that obviously business has been a challenge because of the recession, and then the question is obviously where do we go from here? It looks like we are somewhat on a turning point, although obviously politics is all different a part of it, and we see that in Europe, we see that in the Middle East, we see that in North America, and so from a entrepreneurial perspective and looking forward, where are things going? And at least in your opinion, the primary indicators is that all the underlying indicators are somewhat positive to we will not have a recession and things are gradually improving. But then we got the elections coming up, and then all the other things around the politics are challenged. Then we got the Middle East, obviously we got Russia and Ukraine and China having challenges. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'll give you my opinion, but I'm an expert in business, not on the economy. So when I
Yeah,
say
yeah,
this is less valuable than if you talk to me about business.
right.
But I believe that, and both you and I have lived through a dozen recessions. So it doesn't really matter to me too much because I know there's going to be ups and downs. I know there's going to be recessions and good times. Actually, in I've prospered in recessions. Great, great companies gain more market share in recession than they do when times are good. But my short term view of the economy in the United States is that it's we're going to have a recession or close to a recession, in a mild, somewhat mild recession, and then once again, it's ups and downs, and the economy goes up and down, and then we'll follow it by a spring back strong. And I think the good news is who's ever elected president in and when they take office in January, it'll be a good time for them to do something to prime the pump. And they look typically presidents try to look good, especially at the beginning. And so I expect there to be things that are legislation passed or edicts from the president that will boost the economy in 2025.
So we kind of look at it as they say is, like, and the same in Canada. We watch the United States very, very closely because I do a lot of my business in the United States. It looks kind of like a soft landing or a mild recession. Things seem to be improving. Employment numbers are good. So moving away from that more to your specialty in particular, tax efficiency, extremely important in business, and then obviously franchising and growing. And as you already indicated earlier, that's usually the way I look at it, is that in recessions, and I've seen 7 or 8 of them in the 50 years that I've been actively involved in business, offer not only challenges but also opportunities for those that have foresight. And then it becomes a question of what is changing from in the economy where there are opportunities. Will they grow? Will they, so where does it go from here? But tax efficiency and consideration of that extremely important. And the other part that I saw was you not only on the companies that you had and that you then sold, Liberty Tax Service, but also you were involved in some other food-related industry.
I haven't been involved in any food franchise.
Okay, so where do you see the opportunities then in terms of franchising? Not so much the opportunities, but what direction would you think there are opportunities?
The right now we're focused on we're in 7 different industries, and
Right, right,
2 of them are outstanding. One I've been in the tax industry. I've been in for my entire career, 54 years, and
right.
I'm going into my this is my 55th tax season, and I love it because it's recession proof. You don't have to buy a fancy cup of coffee or a car or a refrigerator, but you do have to file your taxes. And so even in the worst recession of our lifetime, 2008 and 2009, at Liberty Tax we gained 700 offices. Starbucks closed 650. So uh, recession, it's death in taxes. It's a certainty. I love that industry, but I've learned to love another industry for a lot of reasons, and that's pets. One of our fastest growing brand and our fastest growing company is mobile grooming. It's called Zoom In Grooming, and I've just fell in love with the pet industry. It's unlike the tax industry, which has grown in my career about 1% a year. Pet industry is growing 12 to 15% a year, and that includes everything pet. That includes boarding and dog walking and pet sitting and picking up poop and insurance and grooming. Everything is growing, and I just love the pet industry.
Now, if you talk about and we love the pets as well because my wife, myself, we have 3 dogs, we have 7 horses, we have cats, and all of the other kind of things, and and they are part of the family. But the to maintain them and take care of them is becoming increasingly, to us at least, important. Including food. It's not just go pick up a bag of food for the dogs. My wife goes on into the extreme to make sure that what they eat and how they are being taken care of is very important, and we spend a fair amount of money on that actually, and I love it. But that's different from the way it used to be.
Yeah, it's amazing how much people love their pets. They did a study here in the United States about 6 months ago, and they asked parents that have children and pets, "What do you like better?" And two-thirds of the parents said, "I like the pets better than my children."
Oh
So
my God.
it's a different world out there. I'm sort of glad they didn't ask them, "What do you like better, your spouse or your pet?"
I
I'm
usually
afraid of what that
say
answer would have been.
but I usually say, John, yeah, is that I'm in northern British Columbia here in Prince George, as I indicated. We have also a place in Victoria. And Victoria, you're probably familiar with, a beautiful, beautiful area.
Love it.
And,
I
s-
love it.
and
Yeah, I love those islands. Yep, beautiful.
Yeah, so we have, for 20 years, we have had a place there. And so I'm usually here in northern BC and between northern BC, Vancouver, and other places. But on the weekends, like today is Friday, at 1 o'clock, I catch a flight to Victoria. And then I come back here usually and do the things that I like to do. And in the setting, we have a beautiful house there. We have 7 horses. We ride English dressage. So we have an arena, beautiful farm. And then, so what I usually say to my friends, oh, what do you do on the weekends? I said, I go to my 3 doggies and what's her name? And so we get it. So
And
so
how long have
we
you been married? How long have you been married?
40 years, more than
Wow.
40 years. Yeah.
So once in a while you remember her name though.
Yeah, no, no. She's the best thing probably that ever happened to me. But yeah. So we love animals, and then she's very, very supportive of me in terms of my businesses and all the things that I do, and so just to go a bit further about businesses. So in my companies. We have between 8 and 10 different companies, and mainly in 3 silos. The one is lumber, the other silo is warehousing, distribution, and logistics, and the other silo is real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial. But always still, even now, looking at where do we go from here, and as you indicated, is that lumber is very much goes up and down, so it's a delicate industry to be involved in, especially now. And warehousing is more steady, and it takes a lot of investment to get the infrastructure in place, and then residential investment is very delicate as well. Industrial and commercial, somewhat more stable. So those are the silos that I'm mainly involved in, but always looking at opportunity and saying, where do things go from here, right? And then what models should our business have by having the different areas in, like in what you indicated is that you have 10 different areas or groupings or silos that you're actively in, and the pet one is an interesting one because I 100% agree with you. Not only that it has changed dramatically, but it still is going beyond that. And so those then, and I've got the name now that you gave it, but Zoom and Groom, right?
Zoom in, Grimmin.
And Grooming. And that's a franchising.
Yes, that's a franchise.
And so you would be selling the franchising model,
Right.
including locations and a number of other things at a fee on a fee basis.
Yes. And with Zoom and Grumman, it's done by van. So you don't need a storefront.
Okay,
So we have
interesting.
vans that go and do the grooming at the homes of the owners.
I like it. And so, and you do that mainly now in the United States, or is it?
Only in so far only in the United States. We're next week will be 30 months old, 2.5 years old. We have about 100 vans in 75 cities.
So just for the people that are watching us, for to get a feel of this, that so the idea and the concept came to you in some form or fashion, and then you build a business model around it for the purposes of franchising, but it means, correct me if I'm wrong, that you acquire the skill sets by bringing in expertise, and then what you're really doing is showing people how can they be successful, and that means including what the van should be look like and what the business model should be looking like in very much detail, because most people would, you don't want, or the other people don't, they like to get a model that works and that is predictable to a certain extent, and you provide them that in the franchise.
Exactly. We answer every question. We give them the system of doing business.
Correct.
So and it's best in, and my job is to make it best in the industry. And I've been
Yeah.
doing that for 54 years. So we're
Right.
going to give you the best system of mobile grooming in the industry. And your job is to follow that system.
Yeah. And that includes the model of the van and all the other
Yep.
details around the, and all of that, right?
Yeah. And we go right down all the way. We don't just give them the model. We say, here's the vendor that's going to produce the van for you. That's going
Okay.
to
That
upfit the
and
van because
yeah,
we have to take the van and
including the
upfit it and
color and the
put in
names.
all the grooming materials because they're actually doing the grooming in the van.
Yeah.
So the van comes to you ready made by our vendors.
Yeah. Interesting. So now that again is a business model that will be is already successful. So from there on in, you're going to expand it further in the United States, potentially in Canada, and then potentially elsewhere, I presume.
Exactly. Yeah, there are much of Europe and Canada and U.S. of course are pet lovers. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure how much further it can go than that, but certainly throughout our first step is United States and Canada. Second step, Europe.
yeah, amazing. So for again, people watching us in our conversation, what kind of advice you give to, but I do a lot of times, let me share another one with you, is that the ADHD has played a large role in my life, and especially since I was diagnosed, and when I was from the time that I was 13 and started to become a laborer. I'm proud of that today. Till I was 57, I had no idea. So for 45 years, virtually, I kind of struggled with that. I don't know what is with me, other than I wanted to show that I could do it, leave Holland with nothing, start from the bottom. My dream was to build a lumber mill. I did. But so the more I found out about it, the more I felt I had to talk about it. I call it a superpower. And a lot of people say to me, how can you do all the things that you're doing? There you got 10 companies, and then you're writing books, and you're a public speaker, and you're podcasting, and doing all of, how do you do that? I said, ADHD. That's why. So I felt I had to write a book about it, and I did. ADHD Unlocked. And it's written from the mind of an ADHD mind for this book. So you can go this way, that way, or start anywhere in the book. It will be interesting along the way. So that to me was quite successful. Now the other one that I believe has been very important to me is that at approaching 84, is that everybody gets a shock in life that kind of wakes them up in a way, and that happened to me in 2008. I nearly died. I had a case of diverticulitis, which is a rupture. In my case, it was a rupture of my colon, and that was alarming because within 48 hours, as the toxin go through your insides and start attacking your organs, then it could kill you. So I came about that close. And so all the things that I had done before is that, that as we all do, it's by the end of the year, by New Year's, we say, okay, what do we do next year? Let's do this one, that one, and including go to the gym. And so I did that for a number of years. So I buy my gym membership, I go there for 2 weeks, and then find 100 reasons as why I can't go any longer. So I felt I had to become more serious about that. So I hired a trainer. I was training already for about 6 years. And by then I was already into my 70s. And somebody said to me, have you ever thought about competing? And I said, me? Really? And so I started, and I thought, why not? It's a challenge. So I started competing, and then bodybuilding physique. Northern British Columbia came in second bodybuilding, third in physique, which qualified me for the provincials. Then in the provincials, again, I came out about the same. That qualified me for the nationals and for the Arnolds. And then obviously COVID came, and a lot of times the training would not be available like it was before. And now, again, today, for the last 6-8 months, I'm training again for going back to the Arnolds in 2025. By then, I'm 85, and I'm supposed to be the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And I'm writing a book about that. That's very important to me. And the title of this one will come out in August. I don't know if you can read it.
Again,
Living Young,
Dying Young.
Correct. And so I say it's not the numbers that count, it's quality of life. So I'm very meticulous about diet, and obviously I go in training. And the reason that I go to training is not so much the competing part of it, but it gets me to the gym, which I do. And then both my wife is vegan. I'm probably 80-20. And mainly have a plant-based diet, and then stay in very good physical shape. And it gives me the energy and the ability to do all the things that I do. But at the end of the day, all the money in the world doesn't make much difference. If you don't have the quality of life, then that will change everything for you. I know many, many people that are in the 40s or in the 50s, and obviously they are not doing well. But I always say your body that you have been given by nature is very forgiving, but only up to a certain point. And then unless you treat it with care and understand what it is, then as you reach 45, 50, then things will go wrong. And otherwise, I saw a study that had been done by a number of doctors and accumulated by one doc, and of the 100,000 biopsies that had been done, not a single one of them died of old age. And so my plan is to stay fit, healthy, and live till I'm 120. What
I
do you
said,
think
admirable
about?
goal.
So, so what I'm simply saying, John, in all the things that I do, in all the businesses, and all the other things around it, all of that is fun, and I do it with enjoyment. And still, we want to grow our business and expand them and do all those other things. But unless I have quality of life and am healthy and being able to do all the things that I like to do, ride horses and still be active and going to the gym. That at the end of the day is the most important part. The other part that's important for me is giving back to the community, being involved and with young people in particular, and then interacting with successful entrepreneurs like yourself, and other people that I know around North America.
That's admirable goal. I'm wholeheartedly on the giving back train.
I think always, it is very, very important, and that's what and I do a lot of presenting to people, in young age, middle age, that go to universities or colleges, and saying that is one of the most important things. Understand your community, get involved in communities, and give back. It doesn't have to be large amounts of money, but more being part of it is something that when I grew up in Holland, that was very much what we did, and that is part of my personal culture.
Awesome.
So, any thoughts that you have going forward in of our discussions?
I'm where you are. People ask me, what about retiring? Why do you keep going? I made a lot of money, and I founded a $1 billion company. I'm one of only 1,000 people in North America who have founded a $1 billion company, and sold two companies for $500 million each. And so people say, well, why do you work? And I said, because I don't know what I would do. I don't
Yeah,
know anything as much. I don't know anything as much fun as changing people's lives. And just as you are with your books and your podcasts, we're on the same wavelength of to whom much given is much is expected. And when people like yourself or I go and retire, I'm at the pinnacle of my career and the pinnacle of my knowledge, and I can mentor and help tens, hundreds and thousands of people, or I could go sit on a beach somewhere. And I think just a shame to waste all my blessings and not to give back and help people.
yeah, and if I did that, and they asked me the same, so like I'm successful financially, obviously, I have a number of companies, and money is not an issue, but I enjoy it. And if I mention, and my wife, anytime that discussion comes up and sees it out, you say, please don't let him retire, because I don't want him around me all day, because I'm a go-go guy. I'm ADHD. So, and I love it, and I love giving back, and I'm very much interested. And I take offense to sometimes when I watch the U.S. And I'm regularly watching CNN and all the other things, and I hear these guys, and saying that if you're 80, like Biden and the other guy, the other whatever they are, saying that if you're 80, you're done. You take his hand and you walk him to the grave, and I take offense to that, because at 83, 84, I challenge any of these 20, 30-year-olds. And it's not the age, that I don't care if you're 80, if you're 85, if you're 90. It's not the number. I know people that are 40 that are useless and don't have no memories. Fortunately, because of with me ADHD, I have a very, very good memory. Have always had a good memory. And then I'm very good with numbers, and that's been part. And obviously, I'm very successful in business. I'm a good strategic planner, but I take offense to suggesting across the board that if you approach 80, you're done.
Can't agree more.
So that's what I say about it. So I'm hoping to get one of those guys on my podcast so that at least, I'm not yelling and screaming, I don't do that, but at least voicing my opinion about it, that the most valuable asset that I have, and I believe you have, is experience. Experience meaning having gone through all the ups and downs, falling down, standing up, never giving up. And the foundation for my life is still today attitude. I will avoid negative, and I will swear tomorrow is a better day and going forward. Passion, I will give it 150%, and work ethic, I still, even now, work harder than anybody, and I intend to continue that, and taking care of my body, and mentally, physically, and diet to me is very important.
Can't agree more.
John, it was a pleasure. Any closing remarks that you like to make in terms of?
Nope. I'm content.
Now, share one more thing with me before we go.
Sure.
Is that I've been around a long time, obviously. I used to be, already for quite a while, I used to blog to a certain extent. And then, before the COVID days, I was involved in the local television station line, and did a form of podcasting. And then, obviously, COVID came, and that all changed, and said, what do we do now? Now, I had a beautiful apartment here that I had bought as an investment, and we talked about it, say, maybe we should build our own studio and then go more actively involved in podcasting. So we did that about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, or after the podcast, or after COVID, or during COVID, actually. And then joined in with Podmatch. And so there we are sitting here, talking to you from the area that, I've forgotten where you're located again, in
Virginia Beach.
Oh, Virginia Beach. And so just today we had
100 miles away.
100 miles away. And then just today we had, sorry about the sirens here. So then just today we had a fella from Greece, Athens, Greece. We had somebody from Peru, an amazing individual from Peru, a young lady, and we just releasing that podcast when, guys, this morning? It will be released, the podcast before you. I suggest respectfully, watch that. She has a voice. She plays harp, and an amazing podcast from Peru. And, but so the point that I'm making is that I'm doing still a fair amount of public speaking, but a lot of times when I do public speaking, by the time I get there, and it takes sometimes 1 or 2 days for me to get to the location, get back from the location, and it's just not very efficient for me in terms of time management for myself. And so I love podcasting. And the beauty of it is, there I'm sitting here having discussion with you and me, and as you do one a day, I don't quite do that many. I do about 13, 15 a month, and then also being hosted or being a guest on somebody else's. But so there we have this discussion. But I already know that tens of thousands of people around the world will be watching our conversation. How you cannot get a better audience than you do in this kind of format. And I believe podcasting and the internet is still, in this format, is still at its beginning. It still will go much further, and I intend to be very active in it.
Awesome. Congratulations.
And I'm sure you feel the same, right?
Absolutely. It's getting certainly getting bigger every year for the last 10, 15 years.
John, it was a privilege and a pleasure to have you on my podcast. The other
My
thing
pleasure. Thank you.
we will be releasing it. This one is Friday. Will be released on Monday, and we usually release it unedited. It is what it is, and that's what I always do.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Same for you.
Enjoy Victoria.
Thanks, John. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye bye.